The slap wasn't the moment my life changed. The moment my life changed came 37 seconds later. When a black SUV stopped beside me on a dark county road and a stranger rolled down the window, he looked at my bleeding lip, looked toward the birthday party I had just walked out of, then said 7 words that shattered everything I thought I knew. "Hildy, Ronald Carter isn't your father." I was 31 years old. And until that moment, I believed I owed Ronald Carter everything. He fed me, raised me, put clothes on my back. At least that's what he reminded me every chance he got. Every birthday, every Christmas, every family gathering, every accomplishment, every mistake. Nothing in my life was ever allowed to belong to me. If I succeeded, Ronald took credit. If I failed, Ronald assigned blame. For 22 years, I lived under one simple rule: be grateful. Grateful for the roof. Grateful for the food. Grateful for the opportunity to exist, because according to Ronald Carter, everything I had came from him. And anything he gave could be taken away. The irony. The night he finally lost me forever was his own birthday. His 60th, the entire county seemed to be there. Friends, relatives, employees, business partners. 60 guests celebrating 60 years of Ronald Carter. The self-made contractor, the respected businessman. The generous community leader. The man everyone admired, if only they knew him at home. I spent 6 months saving for his present, a restored pocket watch. Not expensive, not flashy, but meaningful. His father had carried one nearly identical. I thought maybe sentiment would matter. Maybe for once he'd see the effort. Maybe for once he'd see me. I should have known better. When he unwrapped the gift, the smile disappeared instantly. The room went quiet. He held the watch between 2 fingers like it was something rotten. "What is this?" "A restored pocket watch," I said. "A used watch." Several people laughed nervously. My stomach dropped. Then Ronald stood. Slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone watched. "What kind of worthless junk did you give me?" The humiliation hit first, the slap came second. His hand struck my face so hard my vision blurred. The crack echoed through the barn. People gasped. Nobody intervened. Nobody objected. Nobody defended me. Not my stepmother. Not my cousins. Not a single person. Because Ronald Carter had spent decades teaching everyone around him that humiliating me was normal. My cheek burned. My ears rang. I looked around the room. And for the first time in my life, I stopped looking for someone to save me. Nobody was coming. Nobody ever had. So I turned around and walked away. No tears, no argument, no apology, just silence. The music started again before I even reached the barn doors. As if I had never existed, I walked down the county road beneath a moonless sky. And that's when the SUV appeared. The passenger door opened. A silver-haired man stepped out, expensive suit, polished shoes. The kind of person who didn't belong anywhere near Cedar Creek. He studied me for several seconds, then delivered the sentence that changed everything. "Hildy, Ronald Carter isn't your father." My heartbeat stopped. When the man opened a leather briefcase, removed a thick envelope, and handed it to me. Inside were documents, birth records, court filings, DNA reports, and a photograph. The picture showed a younger version of my mother standing beside a handsome dark-haired man I had never seen before. They were smiling, holding each other, looking very much in love. Written on the back were 3 words: Charles and Emily, my mother, and someone named Charles. The silver-haired man introduced himself. "My name is Daniel Reeves." He paused. I was Charles Bennett's attorney. The name meant nothing to me. For exactly 3 seconds, then Daniel spoke again. "Charles Bennett was your biological father." The world tilted sideways. I stared at him, then at the documents. Then back at him. No, his expression softened. "I'm afraid it's true." I wanted to scream, laugh, run, do something. Instead, I just stood there frozen. Because deep inside, something terrible was happening. For the first time in my life, pieces were starting to fit. The constant resentment, the emotional distance. The way Ronald always treated me differently from everyone else. The way my mother avoided certain conversations. The strange silence whenever I asked about family history. Daniel pointed toward the envelope. There's more, and there was, much more. Court records show Charles Bennett had spent years trying to find me, letters, phone calls, legal petitions. Private investigators, every attempt blocked. Every attempt intercepted, every attempt buried. By Ronald ... and by my mother, the deeper I read, the worse it became. Charles hadn't abandoned me. He hadn't disappeared, he hadn't forgotten. He had searched for me for decades. Then Daniel handed me a final letter. A handwritten letter. My hand shook as I opened it. The first sentence destroyed me. Dear Hildy, if you're reading this, then I failed to find you before I ran out of time. Tears immediately filled my eyes, because those words contained something Ronald Carter had never given me. Love, real love, the kind without conditions. The kind without debt. The kind without humiliation. I looked up. When did he die? Daniel's face tightened. 6 months ago. The words hit harder than the slap. I had found my father too late, or so I thought. Because Daniel wasn't finished. There was one final secret, one final truth. One final reason he had driven halfway across the state looking for me. He reached into his briefcase and placed another folder in my hands. A trust agreement, dozens of pages, official seals, attorney signatures, bank records, and one number that made my knees nearly give out, $47 million. I blinked, certain I'd read it wrong. Then read it again, $47 million. Charles Bennett had become one of the wealthiest developers in the Midwest, and according to the trust ... every dollar belonged to his only daughter, me. The daughter he never stopped searching for. The daughter Ronald Carter spent 31 years hiding. The daughter everyone in that barn thought was worthless. At that moment, Ronald Carter was inside celebrating his 60th birthday. Laughing, drinking, surrounded by people who admired him. Completely unaware that everything he had built his life upon ... every lie, every secret, every stolen year, was about to collapse. And for the first time in my life ... I wasn't afraid, I was ready. For the first time in my life ... I wasn't afraid, I was angry, not the explosive kind of anger. Not the kind that screams, the dangerous kind. The kind that sits quietly and waits, because while Ronald Carter was inside that barn celebrating his birthday, I was standing on a county road learning that my entire life had been built on a lie. The man I thought abandoned and me had spent 31 years trying to find me. The man I thought was my father had spent 31 years making sure he couldn't. And somehow, Ronald still thought he was the victim. That illusion lasted exactly for months. The legal team moved quickly. Charles Bennett's attorneys had been preparing for years. They had records, letters, court filings, witness statements, private investigator reports. Enough evidence to bury every excuse Ronald could invent. The first lawsuit hit him in September, the second arrived 2 weeks later. By October, people around town were whispering. By November, they weren't whispering anymore. They were talking openly, the truth had escaped. And once the truth gets loose in a small town, there's no putting it back in the cage. Customers started pulling contracts. Business partners stopped returning calls. Employees began asking questions. For decades, Ronald Carter had controlled the narrative. Now he couldn't control anything. Then came December. And the event that finally destroyed him. The public reading of Charles Bennett's will. The courthouse auditorium was packed. Every seat filled. Reporters, attorneys, neighbors, business owners, even people who had attended Ronald's birthday party. Everyone wanted to witness the fallout. Ronald arrived with my mother. Both looked exhausted, older, smaller. Like the last few months had aged them years, I barely recognized them. For once, they weren't the most powerful people in the room. The hearing began at exactly 10 o'clock. Charles's lead attorney stepped forward. His voice carried easily through the room. Today, we will review the final wishes of Charles Bennett. The room became silent, then he opened the file. What happened next shocked everyone, including me. Because Charles had left more than money. He had left instructions, specific instructions. The attorney began reading, "If my daughter is present today, I would like this statement entered into public record." My heart nearly stopped, the room froze. The attorney unfolded a handwritten letter, then read aloud. "Hildy, if you're hearing this, then we never got the chance to meet. I couldn't breathe." Across the room, Ronald lowered his eyes. The attorney continued, "I searched for you longer than anyone thought possible. Some called it obsession, some called it foolishness. I called it being a father." People shifted uncomfortably. Several looked directly at Ronald. The letter continued, "I missed your first steps. Your first day of school, your graduations, every birthday. Every Christmas, not because I wanted to. Because I was prevented from doing so." The room was absolutely silent. Then came the sentence nobody expected. "I forgive the people who stole those years from us." My mother began crying. Ronald stared at the floor. But Charles wasn't finished. Forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. The attorney paused, then turned another page. And everything changed. Charles Bennett had created a foundation. A charitable trust worth $12 million. Its purpose, helping children trapped in abusive households. Children who felt unwanted, children who had been emotionally manipulated by adults. The foundation would bear one name, mine. The Hildy Bennett Foundation. The room erupted into applause. I sat frozen, tears streaming down my face. Because for the first time in my life, someone had believed in me, not because of what I achieved. Not because I earned it, simply because I existed. Then came the final surprise. The attorney cleared his throat. "There is one final item," the room settled. Charles Bennett also purchased the Carter construction debt portfolio 6 months before his death. Confused murmurs spread. Ronald looked up sharply. For the first time all morning, fear appeared in his eyes. The attorney continued. "Upon Mr. Bennett's passing, ownership of those debts transferred to his estate." Now people were whispering loudly. Ronald's face turned pale. I didn't understand. Then the attorney looked directly at me. "Hildy, as sole beneficiary of the estate, you now control those notes." The realization hit me. Charles had quietly acquired every major loan Ronald's company owed. Every mortgage, every business note. Every line of credit. He hadn't done it for revenge. He had done it as protection. A safety net, a final gift. The room exploded. Reporters scrambled to write notes. People stared at Ronald. The man who had spent decades controlling everyone through money suddenly found himself powerless. Because the person holding his financial future was me. A week later, Ronald appeared at my office, alone. No lawyers, no arrogance, no audience. Just a tired old man standing in the doorway. For several seconds neither of us spoke, then he finally said it. "I'm sorry, I waited," he swallowed hard. "I should have told you, yes. I should have let him see you, yes." Tears filled his eyes. Real tears, not performative, not manipulative, real regret. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered every birthday. Every insult, every humiliation, every time he made me feel small. And most importantly, every letter he stole. 31 years of stolen letters. "You didn't just lie to me," I said quietly. "You stole my father." The words hit him harder than anything else. Because he knew they were true. When he finally asked the question, his voice barely worked. "What happens now?" I looked out the window, snow falling across town. Children walking home from school, life moving forward. Then I gave him the answer he never expected. "I'm not going to ruin you." His head snapped up. "What?" "I'm not going to destroy your company." The confusion on his face was almost comical. For months, he'd expected revenge. Punishment, humiliation. Instead, I continued. "I'm going to do something worse." He stared. I smiled sadly. "I'm going to let you live with it." Silence, because suddenly he understood. Bankruptcy would end. Lawsuits would settle, money could return. But knowing he stole 31 years from a father and daughter, that never disappears, that follows you forever. 6 months later, construction began on the Hildy Bennett Foundation headquarters. 1 year later, it opened. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew hundreds of people. Families, children, volunteers, supporters. Media. At the entrance stood a bronze plaque. Not with my name, with Charles Bennett's. Beneath it was a simple quote taken from his final letter. Never stop looking for the people you love. I think he would have liked that. As for Ronald. The last time I saw him was across a parking lot. He looked older, smaller, fragile. He saw me. Started walking toward me. Then stopped. Because there was nothing left to say. The apology had come too late. The truth had arrived too late. The years were gone. But something beautiful happened anyway. I no longer hated him. Hate requires energy. And he simply didn't deserve any more of mine. I got into my car, drove away, and for the first time in 31 years, I wasn't carrying his weight anymore. The man who spent decades convincing me I was worthless had accidentally given me the greatest gift of all. The chance to discover my worth without him. And in the end, that turned out to be worth far more than $47 million.